Okay, so this setup guide today is going to be for the awesome Dolphin emulator, and this is going to be for Windows PC. So what is Dolphin emulator? So it's an emulator that's been about for a very long time, constantly updated, and it supports Nintendo Gamecube and Nintendo Wii games. So in this setup guide, I'm going to go through the configurations for controllers so you can emulate a Wiimote and a nunchuck. We're going to look at video settings, and we're going to generally look at the awesome things that Dolphin has to offer, and I'm going to make this into as simple as possible so you can follow it. And I'm also going to be showing you how to use Dolphin emulator to actually convert your images into different images, file extensions that is. So if you want some very awesome gameplay up to 4K for your games, then check this one out. Okay then, so before I start today's setup guide for the Dolphin emulator, if you like what you see today, just be sure to hit notifications and subscribe so you don't miss up on upcoming retro emulation content on my channel here, just Jamie. So we're looking at Dolphin, and some of you might know what Dolphin is. It's an emulator which emulates Wii games and Nintendo Gamecube games. So why would you all emulate these? Well, very simply, in its heyday, the Wii had such poor resolution, and you can get hardware modifications or even plugins for Wii to support HDMI, 1080p, but to be fair, even with those plugins popped into the back of the Wii console, they look pretty bad. With Dolphin emulator, we can actually upscale to 4K, and we could also put on some anti-aliasing settings, and pretty much the same for GameCube. So obviously GameCube came out before the Wii, but GameCube today also looks pretty bad, and it didn't really look that great in its day. So what we're going to do is set up the Dolphin emulator, and I'll leave the link in my description for this one. And the latest version is here, 23rd of October 2023. We've got this release, which is the current one. And by pressing on the download, we can now download the emulator itself. So I'm going to be downloading this one just here, which is for Windows 64-bit computers. And if you don't have 64-bit Visual C++, Visual Studio, you need to install this one as well. But I'm going to download the Windows 64-bit for now. You will download a zipped archive. So I'm using WinRAR. If you're using something different to extract your files, then the package will look slightly different to mine if you're using a different extraction tool. So what I'm going to do then is just drag out what's inside of this archive, and we can now delete this archive file. So just right click and delete. So here's the Dolphin folder that we need, and our emulator is inside of here. So this is everything we need, and what I've got for this setup guide is a couple of games, one for each system, so you can see what I'm doing. So I've got a GameCube game within a GameCube folder, and I've got a Wii game inside of the Wii folder. So if we look at GameCube first, I'm using an ISO file extension on this one, which Dolphin emulator accepts. And if I go down to Wii, I've actually got two in here. So you'll notice one of them is .enkit.iso and the other one's also .enkit.iso, but Dolphin will support these as well as non-enkit versions such as just .iso on its own. The reason I've got two Wii games is when we get to the Wii section of this video, there's two different layouts you'll need to use to configure your controllers for this, as obviously this emulator can emulate the Wiimote and nunchuck just using a regular or conventional controller. So let's open up Dolphin for this first time. Just double left click on the dolphin.exe. Now, the first thing you're going to see is Dolphin cannot find any GameCube Wii ISOs or WODs. And WODs is obviously those downloadable games you would get from the Nintendo store back in the day. So it says double click here to set a games directory. So if we just double left click here where it says add games directory, I'm going to just left click and highlight the Wii folder. And I'm going to also add my GameCube folder. So to do this, we're going to go to the config tab at the top. And if we go to paths, we can then go to add. And I'm also going to add my GameCube folder with my GameCube game in. So just left click to highlight that, select folder. And as we can see in the background, we've now got the F-Zero GX game. And we can just come out of that. So first of all, what I'm going to do is set up the GameCube element of the Dolphin emulator for you. What we're going to need to do is set up a controller to emulate the Nintendo GameCube controller. So we're going to go to controllers at the top. And right at the top here, you'll see GameCube controllers. If we go to port 1, for this particular game, we're just going to be emulating the standard GameCube controller. Go to configure, and under device at the top, if you just drop this down, you should find your controller. So here's mine, Stadia controller. And what we need to do now for the GameCube controller emulation is just go through the buttons. So for example, I'm going to left click on the A button, and I'm going to match that with my Google Stadia controller, and then we're going to go to B and do the same. Now just bear in mind the Nintendo GameCube controller was a bit funny compared to some controllers. So you know, for example, you've got the Z button just here. So just be mindful when you're configuring your controller to work with this. And obviously the control stick, we're going to use analog for that, or rather I am. And the C stick, I'm going to be using my right analog for. And if we go over to the last section, we got triggers which are L and R. So I'm going to just use L1 bumper and R1 bumper. And once you've configured your controller, if you just go up to profile at the top, I'm going to call this one GameCube. And just go to save. So should your settings disappear, you can just go to the profile part and load back up your configuration. So once you've done that, just press close. And you can also close out of here as well. And the way to run your game is just double left click on it. So as we can see, this is a windowed screen, but we're going to enhance this in a minute. Now it also emulates a memory card as well, which you would put into a GameCube. So as we can see, that's working fine, and the little bit of lag it's got, I think that's tolerable. So if we actually go back over to the website for Dolphin, we'll find under the compatibility list all of the games which are supported. And at the top here, we got 5 stars, perfect. So the games under this section is going to have stars next to them, and obviously if it says 5 stars, then there's going to be no issues at all. Playable also works really fine with very minor glitches. Starts, intro and menu broken, kind of forget it with those systems, with those games. So I'm going to go and look for F-Zero. And interestingly, under F-Zero GX, it's actually got 4 stars. Like I said just a minute ago, 4 stars is going to have minor glitches, so that's the problem solved. But having said that, we look at the statistics just here. Perfect out of the GameCube and Wii library, 38.1%. Playable, 58.9%. So the majority of Wii and GameCube games works really well in this. So let's go back to GameCube, and what we're going to do is if we go to convert file, we can actually change the format of our games from here in its built-in converter. So for example, my game right now is actually an ISO, but we can use this converter to convert it into another recognized image file. So it's handy to have this. So let's say for example, I want to change my F0 ISO into an RVZ file to use on something else. We're just going to go to convert. And then we need to select a destination for our GameCube game to go to. So I'm going to put this into my Dolphin folder and just save. And now that image has now been converted. So each file extension has got advantages and disadvantages. If we come out of here, here is my RVZ file. So what we're going to do is just go back into the GameCube folder, take away the ISO image, and drag in that RVZ I've just converted. And if we open up Dolphin again, this is now running from that .rvz that we just converted. So I just thought I'd mention the conversion within Dolphin because I don't think many people's aware of that one. So anyway, if we go back to F0GX, we're going to look at graphics settings. So if we go to the graphics tab at the top, now the backend by default is OpenGL. If you get a game which gives you a black screen or won't boot, whilst the compatibility list on the Dolphin website saying it should boot, then it's quite likely your backend. So Vulkan in OpenGL are good start points. Now under VSync eliminates screen tear, and obviously we're going to want to enable this because a lot of games on GameCube and even Wii has many 3D games and we don't want screen tear. So we also want to start in full screen mode, so that eliminates the idea of starting your games in that window mode. Now aspect ratio, what we're going to do with this one is force 16:9. It's going to slightly stretch the image, but the Wii and the GameCube were actually designed for 4:3 images. Obviously the Wii, it was pretty poor in its day. You had the PS3 come out around the same sort of time, which was HDMI. Meanwhile, the Wii comes out and you've got a SCART lead. So yeah. So we're going to force 16:9. But obviously this bit's optional. If you want to leave it on auto, just for 4:3, whatever. And also going to backend, if we put this onto Vulkan, your adapter, or rather your GPU should show up. But as we can see, for me, it's working fine using OpenGL. Now if we go to enhancements at the top, this is where we can turn our games into 4K or even 5K. But I'm always going to suggest if you boost this up to 4K, we're going to need a fairly good computer to boost this up to 4K or even 5K. So if you've got a potato, it's not even worth it. In fact, if you've got a potato of a computer, then you might even struggle with 3 times for 1080p. So for me, whilst I'm recording, I'm going to put this one onto 1440p 4 times. Anti-aliasing means we can now get rid of jagged edges around objects within the game. So again, just like internal resolution, if you've got a potato for a computer, I wouldn't bother going anywhere over 4 times MSAA or 4 times SSAA. But just for this setup guide, and if I wasn't recording it, I could go up quite a long way with this, but the recording is putting pressure onto my CPU and GPU. So I'm going to just go to a modest 4 times MSAA on this one. And if we go to texture filtering, again, just like anti-aliasing internal resolution, if you bump up anastrophic to 16 times, it's going to be very wearing on your computer. So just stick with the lowest, and if it works fine in combination with internal resolution and anti-aliasing, then obviously increase these. I'm going to just go to 4 times anastrophic, and randomly we got a post-processing effect. If we drop this down, we've got lots of different filters here, as it were. So if we want to make our GameCube or Wii games look like they're something from the PlayStation 1 era, select 32-bit, or something from the Super Nintendo Mega Drive 16-bit era, then use 16-bit. Personally, I suggest leaving this off unless you fancy experimenting. Now, we got the ability here for a widescreen hack, and like it says just here, to use this, we need to set 416 by 9 to use this widescreen hack when you're in your aspect ratio section. So those are some very basic video settings, but guarantees they're going to make your games look a hell of a lot better. So if we just come out of there, and this time I'm going to double left click again on my game, and this should now boot us into full screen. So obviously that looks a lot better. Like I say, that's not particularly lagging at all, and I could have adjusted those settings to a lot higher if I wanted to. So to get out of that, I'll just press escape on my keyboard. And do you want to stop current emulation? Yes. Now, obviously, like I was saying just a minute ago, Dolphin emulates memory cards. So whatever game you're playing, it's going to act like a real GameCube or a real Wii, and your saves are going to be saved, but we can also do manual load and save states. Let me just boot up F-Zero GX again. If I go at the top to emulation, we got save state and load state. So I've just booted up my game, and what I'm going to do is save state to slot, and I'm going to use save to slot 1, which is empty. And if I close that down and open it up again, I'm going to go back to emulation, load state from slot, and here's what I just saved. Okie doke, so we're going to move on to the Wii part now. So Wii is very similar. Your video settings are going to be the same, they're going to be under graphics. But something to mention, the Wii emulation part is going to require something even beefier. So you can advance your system settings or your video settings to give you higher resolutions. But just be very mindful again that if you've got a potato or anything like that, it's going to struggle. So first of all, I'm going to tone this down a little bit for the Wii games. Go to graphics. And obviously I'm going to start in full screen mode again. Enhancements, so I'm definitely going to drop this down to 1080p. Again, I could support around 2K, 4K on this, but I'm recording. So obviously systems like this, such as PCS X2 and RPCS3, does a lot better without things processing in the background. So anti-aliasing for this, I'm going to just drop to 2 times. And texture filtering again 2 times. I'm going to just exit out of here. And we got 2 Wii games here. Now the reason I've got these is because Kirby's Epic Yarn requires the Wiimote to be in a horizontal position. So what we're going to do is set up the Wiimote now, or nunchuck. So if we go back to controllers, just below GameCube controllers, you're going to see Wii remotes. So you can actually connect, or rather connect Bluetooth sensor bar and use it with this emulator. You can buy those off Amazon. So if you do have one of those sensor bars, just check pass through a Bluetooth adapter. But we're going to emulate the Wii's Bluetooth adapter for this part. So Wii Remote 1, and we need to make sure this is emulated. Now if you're using a real Wiimote, then just select real Wiimote. I'm going to go to configure, and under device, I'm going to find my controller just here, which is the Google Stadia controller. Now, obviously on the Wiimote, we've got these buttons, so I'm going to just use my controller again to configure this. So say button A is going to be A. And for buttons 1 and 2, really it's up to you to experiment with this and see what works best with your controller. And obviously on the Wiimote you've also got a little D-pad as well, so configure all of these. Now for this particular game, like I say, we need to hold the Wiimote sideways. So we need to go just here where it says sideways toggle. And I'm going to just use one of my back buttons just to make this happen. So again, what I suggest doing is go into profile and saving this. So I'm going to just call this one sideways. And I'm going to save this. So again, just like GameCube controller, if it happens to lose your settings, you can just go into profile and select the profile that you've made. And the last thing, we need to check sideways Wii remote. And obviously just save that again. So close, and we can close the controller settings down. And let's just open up Kirby's. So I've just used my back button just to toggle it over so I can now use it sideways. And as you can see for the gameplay footage there, I did use the back button to toggle between sideways mode and normal mode for the Wiimote. So that's a prime example, as well as F-Zero, of why you would emulate our collection. As you can see, the visuals are fantastic. So we're next going to set up the nunchuck whilst using the Wiimote, and this is the reason I've got Super Mario Galaxy 2, because this requires both. So what we're going to do is go back to controllers again, and we're going to go down to emulate the Wii's Bluetooth adapter, emulate its Wii remote, configure. We can either set these up, or we can just go to the profile and load back up the sideways, which we saved. So load. So for the nunchuck part, what we need to do firstly is just ensure that nunchuck is selected under extension. We can now get rid of up white Wiimote, and we need to go over to extension tab. And for extension, what we're going to be doing here is just defining each one of these from the stick on the nunchuck. And I'm using my left analog stick to do this. So up, down, left, right. And we've also got two buttons on the nunchuck. So whichever buttons work fine for your controller, just make those happen. And sometimes in some of the Wii games, such as Super Mario Galaxy 2, it will ask you to shake the Wiimote. So to do this, we're going to go to Extension Motion Simulation. So I'm going to just go to X just here and left click on it. And I'm actually going to press down on my left analog stick. So that's come up as button 7. And then finally, we need to go to Motion Simulation. And under the point section, it's going to be where we emulate, or rather simulate, the pointer of the Wiimote. So for this, I'm going to be using my right analog stick. So up, down, left, right. So once you've done these settings, what we're going to do is save this. And then we're going to close out again, and let's just open up Super Mario Galaxy 2. And just a final little touch, if you don't like the list of how your games are displayed, if you go up to View, List View, and also Grid View, changes how these look. And finally, what I am going to suggest doing is whenever you boot up Dolphin, it might prompt you to update it. If it doesn't, then go to the help and then go to check for updates. And obviously I've just downloaded this for this setup guide, but every few days you'll likely get an update. In that case, update it and it will restart itself and you'll be up to date with the latest version. So that's it for today's Windows Dolphin setup guide for GameCube and Nintendo Wii. Hopefully we got you set up and getting some really great visuals out of your old GameCube and Wii collection. So like I say at the start of the video, if you like what you see today, hit notifications, subscribe and like. It really helps out my channel a lot. Plus it gets you up-to-date retro emulation content as I upload it every day. So also join me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and TikTok. But until next time, stay retro.